gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Welcome everybody, it's Spinnerack and we're live from Comic-Con! Ah! We had a blast. Once again, I have my boys, Petey and Cal, and we're going to tell you a little bit about what's going on at the con. I gotta say, you guys have to get out there. It is an awesome friggin' experience. You got toys, you got comics, you got books, you got games,
and previews.
Cosplay, you got previews. I mean, you got TV shows, you got movies, you got all kinds of stuff. You gotta get out there. We had a blast once again. Of course, we're not being paid by NYCC, New York Comic Con, but I just want to say that.
But we wish we were.
So, gents, Cal, tell me about your experience this week.
Well, I myself of the group, I represent the comic book, the comic book collecting, portion. So if you're out there trying to be a hero at the Comic-Con, it was a little tough because, we had a lot less space, lost Artist Alley. But to be honest, it made it, can I say it was a little bit more intimate this year because everybody was so jam-packed together?
That's a good point.
But some people don't always turn out. Dennis Cohen was there. Walt Simonson is a regular fixture, but he was there, and guys like Jerry Ordway wasn't, so it's not to take it for granted. Frank Cho was out there, Adam Kubert, Andy Kubert, Klaus Janson is out there, and a lot of guys, to be honest, to my surprise, a lot of guys are signing books for free, so I really, really appreciate that because, hey, whether I'm grading it or not, some of the stuff goes in my own collection. Not everything is going to get marked up for a profit. So, I was happy on that end. But on the comic book collecting aspect, hey, a lot of stuff, a lot of ground to cover, my legs are tired. What are the old saying? My feet are tired, but my soul is at rest. Ha ha!
What about you, Petey?
Oh, well, also you have to remember doing this, you can't always prepare for the next year. Some people are schooled and ready. I think you always have to go in and try to find out as much information as possible because you have to remember you have to tap into a lot of the panels. You have to be prepared for that because the first day we were going to every other panel, but sometimes it worked out. So we didn't get into some of the panels on Monday, but we did get into the American Gods panel. We did get into the Black Panther panel that was off-site, which was on 36th Street. And that was interesting because I can't say his name to wholly.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, who we would love the opportunity. I'm going to catch up to him.
Well, they had him and also Jason Reynolds, and he was talking about the novel, the Miles Morales novel. So they were mostly talking about how, as black writers and writing black characters and Jason Reynolds brings a more Brooklyn approach to it. And I'm not, because...
That's something you got to touch on with these guys because I don't... What is a Brooklyn approach? Especially since what my... I don't want to say gripe, but my disappointment with Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on the Black Panther. And at the same time, I think it's been pretty well received overall because I think the sales numbers are there.
Yeah.
But he took Wakanda, which is... for all the stuff that he writes in his books about in America where he's worried about the future of his son... and race politics and identity politics and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Wakanda was a place where none of that stuff was there. It was a place of it's an idol rather. It's a place of literature, art, music, like close to like Krypton or Themyscira or any of those places, and he plunges it into civil war. So I would if I ever caught up to him like I don't understand what was your thinking with this. Where this is a place to be aspired to at the end of the day, and you have made it a commonplace African nation at the end of the day, and for what reason?
Well, I think he touched on that, right?
No, well, I don't think that he touched on the history and what his approach would be. So it was different from Jason Reynolds, who was talking about everything he writes as a love letter to Brooklyn, whereas he was talking about taking on this character that's been around for so long and what his approach would be. And the interesting part is having a question and being able to be like a lot of Cal here would come with it wouldn't be that broad. He would attack right to the heart to answer that. He would get him with the question, but it's interesting how the fans would come up, have long questions and be broad. But he didn't really get into it. He talked about just taking on this character And there's parts that I just would wonder about, because there was the thing that they said about Spider-Man. Because I was like, hey, Spider-Man, he says as a kid, with great power, great responsibility. Spider-Man did not say that. Stan has a caption, and that's a reflection on what happens in the story.
Right.
So you can't just look at the caption, because Stan is talking to the reader, and it's something that I was just watching the Stan interview where he was talking about. That's what he read as a kid, an adventure series where at the end the writer would say, I got your notes and I was thinking about that approach that you guys asked, and I'm trying, even though he was having a monologue, he made it seem like a dialogue, which was Stan's approach. So there's some bits, and that's nitpicking, because overall the panel was fine. They didn't get to anything heavy. They just mainly talked about trying to get Jason Reynolds to write a comic book, and Jason Reynolds is a novel writer, and it's like, I don't know, I don't know if I can do it. It's not my, it's not my medium. So.
I'm glad to hear you said that, because too many of these guys, all they got to do is throw enough money at them, and they're like, hey, I can do a script.
I mean, there's one thing that Tahishi Coates says is that there's not money in it. I mean, he made that repeatedly clear.
Yeah, he did say that.
But one.
So then for the love, because he was a person who read comic books.
The love of what?
And he loved the red.
For the love of God, can Wakanda go back to what it's supposed to be?
But he did point out on that particular panel. He said that he looked at it from I think it was the Redlands,
The Hudlin?
the Hudlins. That the Hudlins, he loved that run. And
you're kidding me? That run was
awful.
awful.
That's what he said, and he said that.
So he didn't read Priest's run.
He said he took. Yeah, he read Priest's, but he said he took it from when Wakanda had gone through a lot of wars and a lot of different things, and he says, what? Let's go into this nation and delve into it more. And what are the parts of it?
See, that's where he can't get away from his own political zeitgeist, unfortunately. Wakanda is that. Again, this is a guy who is writing about hoping that there's going to be a positive future for black people. And there you have a country, and rather than him show, okay, this is the type of future we could eke out, no, let's keep going on with the war and the conflict and so on and so forth, which is so contradictory. It's so oxymoronical at the end of the day.
We'll probably go over that another time, but I understand what you're saying, but he made some interesting points on that. I mean, what else would we go through while we were there, Peter?
Well, I would just segue that into going to they had the two novelists. They had Jason Reynolds and they had Ronald Smith. They both wrote novel versions of Marvel characters. Jason Reynolds wrote the Miles Morales story, but that's the thing he wrote about, and I like the fact that he said that it's a love letter to Brooklyn, because as a kid, I see now a lot of my friends talk about the struggle they had when it's always been fun, even when there's points where I was scared to death.
In Brooklyn.
Yeah, in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I enjoyed going to that point and then getting out of it and finding the fun in that, or then the humor afterwards.
Because those moments of fear are greatly outweighed by all those other moments of just having a good time at the end of the day, until it became. Again, all of us grew up. All of us grew up in Brooklyn. Maybe not live in the same neighborhoods anymore. But I don't think anybody looks upon those years of growing up as this monumental struggle. We didn't have hot water and electricity was flickering off. We had fun.
Well, also I'm the person who moved from Brooklyn, so it's also feel like I don't want to just wear Brooklyn on my sleeve because everyone is just saying I'm from Brooklyn, I know how to do this, and I was just glad he said that. And the cover has Miles Morales, and it has either the BQE, or it felt more like a above ground train, and then it had the bodegas. And when I lived in Queens for a short time, I used to look at what's the name, Welcome Back Kotter, and see that opening, and that gave me the feel of like I wish I was home.
What do you think? Well, you stayed in the neighborhood the longest. I think I don't know who left first, me or Petey, but both of us eventually leave, and you stay in the neighborhood the longest. What do you feel? When because you got to stay in the neighborhood the longest. And the whole growing up in Brooklyn thing, because I think the romanticized version is like it's this daily struggle, so it makes you tough. These Brooklyn guys are really tough, but then there's that absence of fun, that absence of hanging out, that absence of just being cool with people.
Well, my experience was a bit different because I moved out of the neighborhood, and moving out of the neighborhood to another neighborhood in Brooklyn totally changed my experience. Whereas I was comfortable in the neighborhood that I was totally uncomfortable in a different neighborhood. And so I didn't spend as much time there as I normally would have. But in other parts of Brooklyn, I always identified with it, and I still continue to go there, no matter, even though I no longer live there, I reside elsewhere, Harlem. But Continuing, gentlemen.
Well, if we go past that point, the next day, Friday, I think we were more prepared for it. No, well, this one last note. Since we missed a lot of panels that we couldn't get into, we went to see the American Gods one because we were like, we got to see something, and we hadn't seen. I think I saw 2.5.
Did you see Full Frontal? Did you see Full
I saw
Frontal?
the whole series.
But
and I had issues with it, and I think we may have done a review.
That's what the point was. We went there, and the actors, Ricky
Whittle,
and Pablo, and all of those actors, they really entertained us, and that's the part that's good about these panels. Whether you have an issue with the story of this, enjoying them and enjoying their personality, and I'm talking about Neil Gaiman.
Right.
That's the part of the, you can pull back well, what about this scene? And you're just like, oh, I can enjoy this moment and have fun. And I think that's the key to having it, because you're not there to drag, Neil Gaiman all the time. Why would you do this? That sort of thing.
Well, speaking of panels, there was one panel in particular that I know we have to discuss because the clock is ticking.
What panel is that?
The Doomsday Clock panel. Now we need to get into
that in a second.
No, we're gonna need time for this. We're on the clock. We're on the clock.
We're not gonna spend all the time arguing about that.
We don't have to spend all the time. Just most of it.
We're leading to this.
So just continuing what Petey was saying, one of the great things about the cons is that you get to go to these different panels and you see the artists, the actors, the actresses, the producers of these shows, and how they engage with
like Jeff Johns?
Yes,
Jeff Johns was there. We saw the Jeff Johns panel. He was
at the Doomsday Clock panel, right?
Yes, he was. And so it's interesting when you hear the perspective. You read their works, you see their shows, and you're like, but then you hear them and you understand now a little bit of the reason that they have behind it. I mean, not necessarily.
Don't fall for that.
But you know what? You understand. You know what I'm trying to say? And one thing you do find out is that you find out other people actually like certain things. There's so many people there, and you're like, probably you may have had a problem, but other people didn't have that problem.
Yes.
And it makes you reassess. I mean, prior you stick to your guns and say this is what I don't like, but at least it makes you say, hey, there's another point of view out there, and whether
there's always another point of view.
May be valid too.
There's always another point of view. I had to look this word up because I didn't know what it meant. But once you are woke, I had to look it up, but now I know how to use it correctly. Woke and lit have been giving me a whole bunch of problems because those are like the worst phrasal verbs I have ever heard in my life. Okay, but once you are, it sounds so dumb saying it. Once you are awoken, you should not go back. When we go to those panels, because this happened to me before, where some guys explain stuff, and I'm like, okay, now I understand what's going on here better. And then it becomes to the point, hey, the idea that you had sounds like a really good idea. You didn't execute it, though.
Well, I would say that you're right, but at the same time, I still respond with not, watching or paying for it. I'm thinking about possibly reading Jason Reynolds, but I'm not sure, because it's a little too much Brooklyn in the face talking about that. But we got to get to the Doomsday Clock. So I did the Kirby panel, which had John Byrne and Walt Simonson, and it was
Byrne was there.
He was there.
Man, I wish
he was interested. A friend of mine said, because he had a leather jacket, said, "What's Byrne doing there? Coming in like Shaft." Byrne was humorous, as was Walt Simonson. He talked and he signed up at IDW desk. Then since we're there, and we got to go through. This isn't actually swag, but they had a special book that they had, which he was signing this and a couple IDW stuff, and I think it was maybe 2 non-Marvel stuff. So it's sort of a joke on like the bad cover, like it's Melvin. So Byrne did sort of it's Byrne. So this is a special one that they did, and there's a lot of other products that you only can get while you're there.
Why is Spock holding Uhura?
Why not?
It's revisionist history.
That's not. What are you talking about?
That's Scotty's girl.
No. That's 5. How could you go to Star Trek 5?
Because that actually happened. This never happened.
He's constantly. She's talking and singing to Spock all the time.
No, it's either Sulu or Scotty. And Scotty's girl as a 5.
You can't be. You have to watch the rest of the shows. There's a ton of times where she's interacting with him, and they have this interaction.
Nothing came of it. He liked the nurse.
It's not about the romance.
He liked Gene Roddenberry's wife.
Clock. Let's get back to the Doomsday Clock, guys. So we saw the panel.
He did not like Gene Roddenberry's wife. He kept pushing it to the side.
Because he liked her.
Guys,
she's stoking those emotions that he had to push to
Yes,
suppress.
we can go more in depth.
Now we're running out of
Keep
time.
letting them hijack the thing.
Right.
We get into the Doomsday Clock. So Friday we're all prepared. And we go to the Doomsday Clock, right? And in this one, they talk about him wanting to do the push and pull to do something with the Watchmen characters, and not necessarily get into just because it's money. And I had an issue because he said this was not an event. This is not a crossover.
Yeah,
It
right.
is a crossover because you can have crossovers within it. But it's like the interesting part that people have is like you have this end shot with Rorschach, and you're like, oh, okay, is this, that's interesting, the thing that Mario brought, because we're sitting there and they show that panel, everyone goes crazy.
Yeah,
And
that reaction was.
No, but that's the interesting part. And Mario has said many times, isn't that up on comic books? And he says, isn't Rorschach dead? Like, that's the part. That's a hurdle. That's a big hurdle for me.
They didn't care.
But I'm saying that makes it an event.
And he's done this before.
That makes it an event, and that makes you
Infinite
a hurdle
Crisis.
to get past.
Infinite Crisis. Who's the person he brings back from the seemingly dead? The Golden Age Superman. 'Cause we don't, these guys were put off. They were supposed to go someplace else, and the whole idea is the place they were supposed to go was supposed to be like a paradise for them, where they finally got to rest, just chill out. And then we find out where they went was like it looked like it was literally some prison where Lois Lane was just going to waste away. But he brings that character back. And I fell for it once. I was like, oh, okay, like I get to see him again, only to take him out. Rorschach being alive undercuts so much of what happened in Watchmen. If you read it, and I think you read it, you internalized it, you actually understood it, Rorschach being alive undercuts so much of what happened in the original story. So you think at the very least there would be some quiet and maybe some people maybe like a murmur or something. No, the audience like, simply because they, hey, Rorschach is a cool character. We get to see him, and we'll get to see him, threaten people, what have you. So Johns honestly understands I guess, the readership better than I do, because I would think that these guys are like, no, you just totally undercut the story. They're like, oh, no, step aside, man. We don't care. Just give us more Rorschach.
We don't know how he will bring him about.
But he's also the top
It doesn't
writer.
matter. He needs to be dead.
So
No,
we
they bring a lot of people back to life in comics. You know that.
We're staying on the fun aspect of this.
Yes.
We got to that, and you are definitely right. There's a ton of issues, but you also have the people that are going for this. They're enjoying this, so that's a hard thing. We're gonna obviously get to Doomsday Clock because it's 12 issues. We're gonna review it.
Yes.
So we're gonna chop it up.
Yeah, we're gonna be reviewing every issue. Oodles are fun.
I also went.
Can't be worse than Metal.
Well, no. we also went to. I went to the Gotham by Gaslight.
And I went to DC Metal.
You went to DC Metal. How was the Metal thing?
DC Metal was pretty good. I mean, I was very surprised by it. I read one of them, and the Batman, Green Lantern, and I wasn't that crazy about it. But the people there, the audience, they were hardcore. And
they're sheep, man.
Listen, sheep or not, let's not knock them. They're people
sheep or not.
Look. They were there, and Scott Snyder, they're coming out with a whole new universe of stuff.
If you
Snyder is right, he's doing three to four episodes of all this stuff.
They're not thinking about the quality of the story.
They think some of this stuff is going to impact the universe. They have gone through it. The whole panel was there.
Big business. If you wrote a story and that story took off, and then you were at the panel saying, yeah, these guys come over here with this type of stuff and they sell you this bill of goods, and then they never execute on it, these guys would stop and think, it's like, hey, you know what, yeah, you're right, and they would roll along with that. There's no independent thought going on with that. I mean, at the very least, look, we can just roll with it. We can just roll with it, or we can speak to it.
It's a business that's making money. DC is definitely making money off of this.
I'm not talking about the money.
Let's not.
We've got a story where the biggest moment. Okay, look, this is pretty much a facsimile of Watchmen is what we're looking at so far. Even down to the grid.
Metal, right?
Right, Metal.
Then we get to Metal. We've reviewed Metal. Metal is awful. The story is awful.
The
fact that people are happy for it just shows.
No. All right. When you ran into a collaborator of yours, an artist, right?
Right.
And did you run into any other of your friends or any person you worked with while you were?
That's the only person I work with. So.
I mean, any other friends while you were there?
I was looking for you two guys, but you kept ducking me. So
no, he was ducking us. But the other thing is that running into people while we were on the con, the people were friends of mine. We also ran into Strange in the Membrane. They have their own show, and Mario wants to battle them. So we're gonna talk with them. But they're cool guys. We ran into them on a couple panels. They were smart. They got their thing together. So, I mean, I just want to keep it to the fun part that the people are having. And I agree. We've gone through it. And we've attacked Metal. We chopped Metal up just now. We chopped up that, and it's fine. But it's like, look at all the thing when you go in there. Look at all the cool stuff. We got like We got the spinner rack hat. What is that doing here?
They were selling. They were giving spinner rack hats out
they
at the
weren't
con.
selling spinner rack hats, but Mario got this.
Are we getting a percentage?
We're not getting a percentage. And then other times you just fan out. You just go and fan out. I ran into Michael Golden, and then I went insane. Like, what am I doing buying this? They got me. They got me in this 3D thing. And then I don't know what the certificate is. He knows what the certificate is. I don't know what
Certificate
it is.
of authenticity. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. But it's like, oh, that's all. Saying I went to the Kirby thing, I do have something from Kirby too.
Now
But
this
we
I
also
would
have
like.
these-
I would like to see what you got from
We
Kirby.
had this, also the sci-fi bags. They were giving them out every day.
Everybody was walking
Every
around
morning
with
they give
People
you
were
that.
begging for them on the street. People who didn't even go to
Oh,
the
and so in the morning I also did. I didn't know that Voltron
We did
is like
Voltron,
a
yeah.
totally new, different thing.
them. You haven't seen it yet?
No,
We
but
should
I'm
review
like,
it.
Man, I'm
we were on the
watching it and I
panel,
was just
pretty
like,
good.
It's up
wow.
to season 4.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it's like they got. I never saw like the lions by themselves traveling into space. I don't really remember them doing it. They were all on one planet.
And the princess
this
has a
was-
lion too.
That's cool. That's
Yeah,
cool.
so that's what we got. I got from that panel.
That is cool. That's nice.
There's also posters, but then I know for Doomsday Clock, but I know Cal would just rip them apart. But
No, bring it out.
I don't have it. I couldn't bring it. I was coming from home.
Okay.
So do you have them
I
with
don't know
you?
if I still have it with me. Let me see.
What do you have? See?
No, I got like stuff. This is regular books.
Get everything.
So if you were interested in
Persepolis Rising.
yeah, I mean one of the hottest books out there, the Covey books, you can't beat it. That's just a TV show that they have on right now that comes on Sci-Fi. Watch it. You can't knock it. James Covey.
Well,
I mean,
I don't have
authors.
The only thing I got for myself, a friend of mine was able to go on. He was kind enough to go and wait on the Funko Pop line for me and get this exclusive Superman. So I'm happy about that. And just a piece of advice to those of you who are trying to be comic book heroes out there: do not take eBay over the Overstreet Guide. Okay, don't necessarily go and say, hey, look, I'm going to look up what the number is on what this book sold for on eBay, as opposed to the Overstreet Guide. We'll probably do a show about this later. The Overstreet Guide is the gold standard for what you should be looking for in terms of a sale or a buy for a comic. If you could go and somebody had a bad auction, and that could be a really good book, and then you can't haggle based on eBay. You have to have a knowledge of both, and then you can actually score some decent books. But it's also good if you're selling. Because most of those guys, when they're selling, they don't go by eBay for their sales. They go by the guide. Okay, the guide is like, if the guide says $50, that means that's pretty much at max. It shouldn't go over $50, and you shouldn't be looking to spend under $50 for an excellent copy of that book. But if you also notice, the guide doesn't go under $3. Now we all know we can get comic books for $1. So that's something to keep in mind when you're going in there and trying to get some stuff done. Because I saw some guys getting hemmed up, and they're looking on their phones, eBay, and I'm like, dude, this guy's not going to sell you if you flash that number to him, hey, this is what it sells for on eBay, he's going to say, go buy it on eBay. Yeah. Okay? And then you can pay shipping and everything of that nature. You have to know how to deal, not haggle. You have to know how to deal in person. That means you have to respect the guide. The guide incorporates eBay numbers as well. Okay? The only big difference is a lot of guys don't seem to understand is that where the guide will say this book shouldn't go lower than $3 because that's what it's being sold for. So it shouldn't go lower than $3. Remember, a lot of these guys who are dealers may have gotten the books at 50 cents a piece, so they can sell it for $1 and still, make 100% profit along those lines. But that's just something to keep in mind. It's something I'll speak a little bit more to when we have more time.
Well, that's a great thing, good point he brings up, because at the con you have exclusive con items, like he was just saying before, and that's something you should definitely go out and get if you can, because it's not going to be, you can't get it anywhere else. And a lot of times there's a huge markup. And cosplayers, let's not say, they're as usual cosplayers to the wazoo. This year, who did you see most of?
Wonder Woman. I saw a lot of Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
I saw my favorites there were many women in regular Spider-Man outfits and Spider-Gwens. They were some of my favorites. And then there's a ton of Harleys. More of the plain Jane Harleys are some of my favorites. Like the regular girls that sort of, but don't go too crazy. They're sort of my favorites. So.
And you'll see a lot of those either on our Instagram page. There'll also be something on our YouTube coming up when our man PD puts it together.
I don't know if the women who came out to be Wonder Woman, this time around, took it more seriously or what have you, or it was the outfit or what have you. But to be honest, maybe it's because it's the skirt as opposed to the trunks. But the outfits look pretty good. Those are the ones I saw the most, and the quality of the outfits looked pretty good. And the people who decided that they were going to be Wonder Woman, also did that. A friend of mine saw Red Sonja, and he was very disgusted. So,
Well, one thing
So
that's
that's when you
interesting.
ran into another friend. That's at the.
Oh, same friend.
that's a partner I work with.
Oh, part. Okay.
So one thing that's pretty interesting.
I'm
is
about
that
business.
you have last year. I think we had more of the a lot of classic Wonder Woman. Along with some of the newer ones. This year, I think it was overwhelming the new Wonder Woman outfit.
Yes,
as
Yeah.
opposed
sort
to
of the
other.
armor.
So there was no question
Yeah.
about it. Harley Quinn was all over the place.
Don't worry, they'll go back
Classic,
to the
but-
classic outfit next year.
So,
But
yeah.
but there's always the movie hit, and of course people would like to people want to do their own particular rendition of it and come and show how well they can carry on the outfit or the mantle of Wonder Woman, if you will. But those are the ones that I saw the most, and I think we actually saw some of the same cosplayers from Boston.
Yes.
You know,
Boston
yeah,
Comic-Con.
They're
They go around.
they're here in New York. They're still doing it. Still wearing those outfits and going on with it.
So one other thing about the panel before we go, we saw exclusive Hulu's coming out. Marvel's coming out with a new show called Runaways, and they showed the entire first episode the other day. So you gotta check it out. It's about the Pride. It's about Runaways, kids with powers. We also saw what else? They showed the first episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes,
Very
yeah,
popular panel we saw. They're in space. We don't know how they got to space. It's just absolutely off the hook.
Is she still complaining?
Huh? We saw Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
That was a pretty interesting panel there.
Yes,
That's not
and
what you
they
said. You said it was whack.
No. This is about.
We will discuss
no.
the particulars later, but we're just giving you an idea.
But they
of what was
also
going on.
had the astronaut, the former
Mae
astronaut,
Jemison?
Mae Jemison, that was
Oh,
there, and
you
she's
should know
also
who that
been
the first African American is, babe.
I don't even get into it. But it was.
Some people gotta get taught stuff.
And then before we came here, there was a stand that was actually to replace the Punisher, because of obviously what happened, the recent shooting. They didn't want to have
the terrorism that occurred
Yes.
in Las Vegas.
So they had a
Call it what it
stand.
is,
They
babe.
had a stand interview with Joe Quesada, and it was very interesting. And we've read stand, but it was.
That's really interesting.
What?
No, that they decided that because of the shooting that
They
they were
do
going to
that.
do that. Because I just went to a kid's birthday party the other day. It was like laser tag. These kids are running around with full-blown rifles
Yeah, I know.
and flak jackets on. Ba-da-da-da-da. Nobody cared. Nobody
Yeah,
cared.
but I mean, remember they had that whole thing with the muted opening for Batman several years ago. When
Oh,
there was a
yeah,
massacre.
yeah.
I mean, every time it's a shame. America, we gotta stop this crap. You know what I'm trying to say? I don't understand this. Whole
Talk to your
concept.
party.
Well, before we go, let's sort of give our own feeling of the con as far as from being kids of comic fans to now.
Good. I'll go last.
You can go first.
I'll go last. I called last.
We have 15 seconds each, gentlemen. So just say what you gotta say.
We got 2.5 minutes left.
No, we finished 58.
So, Mario?
Go ahead.
Loved it. I gotta say, every time I go there, it's definitely crowded, but plan what you have to do. This guide is highly important. If you want to know what you want to do, you know what happens on what days and where things are. Do it. Enjoy yourself. Everybody's there to have fun.
Excuse me. The con is about connections. And regretfully, I didn't get to hang with my brothers, but tomorrow we're doing it up. We're going to be together unless, Cal has to do his
Come on,
comic
Chop. Remember, I
exhibition.
thought you were hanging with me.
He leaves me. He leaves me. He walks up. Oh, I got to get to the Marvel thing, and he's gone.
Yeah, MSG. More sweet girls. Yeah.
So, lastly,
Hey, it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. You can't go wrong with NYCC. See ya.
Yeah. So, spinner rack out, I think, because we usually finish 2 minutes before. But if not, then we're just going to. This is called overtime now.
all right, so then that's the case. What if you had a big post from Gary Frank? Would you want to read this? If Gary Frank, what about Gary Frank?
I love
Does
Gary.
that do anything
I
for
love
you?
Gary Frank's art on
For,
Superman.
Doomsday Clock.
I love
Yeah.
Gary Frank's art on Superman, so I'll probably give it a go simply because it was Gary Frank. Look, on that type of aspect, look, there's a part of me. Every comic book reader has a bit of fanboy in them, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna, look, I'm not gonna read this. Wait a minute, who's doing the art? Okay, at the very least, I'll take a little go at it. But they're not even trying to disguise it. It's Watchmen. This is, and he said it very plainly. Watchmen was Alan Moore's contrast to the DC universe. Doomsday Clock is supposed to be the contrast to the Watchmen universe, but we already had that. We already had the DC universe, which was a contrast to what? The real world. Alan Moore was saying, no, let's deconstruct them and make them more real world-like. And there was that guy who was, the guy who was asking him questions, ignoramus. That I wish I could have been there to ask the question. He's saying, hey, Dr. Manhattan was Alan Moore's, this was his take on Superman or what have you. I was like, no, it wasn't. That was Captain Atom. Alan Moore said as much that it was Captain Atom. And here's the thing, Alan Moore later on did Supreme. And he was saying, no, that was his homage to the Silver Age Superman and so on and so forth. So this was not, Dr. Manhattan was not supposed to be this, he was not supposed to be the flip side of this, incredibly human, incredibly, heartfelt, character, which would be Superman. Dr. Manhattan was something that he did on his own without that. But these guys have decided to go postmodernist with everything that what the series is, simply because they're going to be pitting Dr. Manhattan against Superman for the confines of their story. So,
Jeff John did say, the difference between this show and the other one is that Alan Moore, when he did it, he was basically a critique of the comic books industry, right?
No, that's not what he was doing.
He was adding.
Right, but he said it was. But this is supposed to be like a counterpoint, to show the difference now that the comic book industry has changed, and it shows you how DC has changed. Because basically, this is his take on what it was at the time.
He was saying that he trying to bring the characters back to being positive characters in the panel. But it's just hard to say because I know your sticking point was that he said he wants to see how far Superman can fall. Right. So in this panel, he's saying getting back to those, with Rebirth as a start, and then this will bring them back. And it's like he said, it's conflicting views. So I'm not sure.
One guy says one thing. Anyone who's read this stuff or at least read any of the interviews understands what Alan Moore was doing with these characters. And what was the genesis for them as well, because he wanted to do the Charlton characters, and they told him, no, you can't do that with these particular characters. So, these guys evolve and...
Okay.
Well, Spinner Rack out. Thank you very much for coming to this live show.
Check the website.
We're going to put it back out. You'll check it on YouTube, and you'll also see it again on MNN.
Check the website.
Spinner Rack.
Unfiltered content.
Thank you for showing.
Unfiltered content.